Hello and welcome to another free code session. My name is Jason Bach, and I'm going to continue on with this inline mapping stuff. It's been kind of fun to play with it. Now that I have everything at least working enough, it's been fun to give this a whirl. So why do I have show line annotations? Tabs? No. It's amazing how I can get so distracted. Whitespace? View whitespace. Control yes. There we go. Okay. I actually don't like to see that. So I was getting distracted. So this has been fun playing with, and I want to add in some other stuff. I did add in some performance testing with benchmark.net, and long story short, well, I'll make it a little long story. So what I did is I said, what's the comparison between doing it with the inline way, which is what I have, compared to what happens if you try to do this with reflection. And I just whipped up a bunch of code that I think is close to what I'm trying to do with the inline mapper, just doing it through reflection. And actually, now that I look at this, it's not quite the same, because I think I'm doing here in the source properties, I need to find, yeah, it's kind of reversed. I get all the source properties, and then I go through all the destination properties, and I try to find a source property that's matching it. In this case, what I do is I get all the destination properties, and then I try to find a source property that matches, which, you know, it does the same thing. It's mostly to kind of show, well, actually this bothers me. I'll have to fix this to be a little bit more reflective as to what I'm actually doing. But the point was is to actually do it through reflection. And then I included AutoMapper. And I wanted to be really clear. In fact, I tweeted this out because I gave a summation of the results. I am, like I said with mock and substitute and rocks, I'm not here to try to assert any, or what's the right, overthrow, whatever, libraries that people are already using. AutoMapper is used a lot in projects. I think it's overused. I think it's abused. And that's why with this, I have absolutely no intentions of making this fancy, at least not out of the gate. Because unless you have a very, very strict one-to-one mapping, you probably want to write it by hand. And you probably don't want to use something like this. So this is when you really, truly have a one-to-one or as close as possible one-to-one match between types. So for what it's worth, that's what I'm focusing on. But I wanted to at least compare it to AutoMapper and say, hey, where is it? I have no idea. So when I ran it, I got these results, and as you can see, this wasn't too surprising. I don't know what AutoMapper does underneath the scenes. I don't know if it creates an expression and compiles it based on what it sees the first time. I don't know. I really don't know. But as you can see here, the inline approach is I'll say one order of magnitude. Yeah, now that I look at the numbers, it's actually one order of magnitude. 10 times faster, whatever you want to look at it as. And it consumes slightly less memory to do it. Using reflection is obviously the worst way to do it. And this is kind of what you're trying to do with source generators. You don't want to eliminate reflection completely because there are cases or scenarios where maybe it actually makes sense to do it with reflection. But if you can eliminate it with something like this, why not? Now, of course, one may say, well, for every type that you want to map with the approach that I have, you're now going to generate an extension method, and therefore you might have code bloat. Fair enough. You're, you know, that's a point that is valid. Of course, then you have to look at, well, what's the speed to loading the assembly, to jitting the code? Is that worth it compared to, with reflection, it's the same code every time. No matter what type you give it as a source and a destination, it will be the same. The way I tested it, it's specific to those two types, but that wasn't the intent. It was to basically, the code itself is generalistic enough that you could say, hey, give me the source type, give me the destination type, and I'll figure out how to do the mapping. So in any event, this is exciting because this is what I'm trying to get, out of source generators, is any time that you can find these pieces of code that maybe either relying upon reflection, maybe it's something that is a piece of code that, every time we, deploy, we have to make sure we add these things in here. Whatever the case may be, if you can resolve something at compile time, look at this, because it can save a boatload of stuff. Okay, what I really want to focus on, at least for now, is how do we handle records? Specifically, how do we handle inits? Because I noticed that wasn't working the first time. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to say, with our little test here, is run this. Okay. And what we should see is just one map. And we do. Okay. Well, now let's change this. Actually, I think you can do, like if I said this, I don't think inits are not restricted to records. You can actually say like init here, and that's perfectly fine. Okay. So I want to solve the init problem first. Actually, let's put that back in here because that isn't working. In fact, well, let me check. Let's make sure it's not working because I don't think it was when I was writing this the first time. Oh. Well, shut my mouth. It's possible that I thought it wasn't going to work. And yeah. Or maybe I just, because I was trying other things and I wasn't even getting the generator to run, that got lost in the noise. But apparently this does work. Let's look at the syntax visualizer because I'm kind of curious. This is an init accessor. I think if I go into, let's get rid of that. And what we want to do is inline mapping slash test host. Let's just go into bin release. Now, I don't know if this is actually going to work in the sense that I don't know if it's going to actually be able to understand. Yeah, it looks at it as a set. Let's try experimental. Yeah, it doesn't even know. All right, check for updates. So it's not there just yet in terms of knowing that that it knows what an init is. But I think is external init. So this is using this mod rec, which is something I barely remember from my IL studying days. So this is actually, this is a set, but there's this little special thing in there that's saying it's an init. So yeah, so it's using some metadata in a way in the assembly to figure out that you're doing a set, but really this is an init. Yeah. So kind of cool. I actually want to look up the mod rec again because reasons. So that's why it works, because it still looks as a set method. And so if you go into the generator, what we're looking for is to see, do you have destination properties that actually have a set method? And you do. It just so happens to be a init, because you can't say that. That doesn't make any sense at all. Yeah. So you either have to have a set or an init. Yeah, that's the accessor. So yay, we know that works. Okay, well now let's look and say, what happens if we make these records? Does that even matter at all? Yeah, it does, because now it doesn't know what a record is. So you can tell, again, if that shows you the same code that you had, it means you didn't generate another source tree. And so therefore, something went wrong with the generator, or it didn't do what it was supposed to do. So if I say here public record X, okay, and let's look at the syntax visualizer for a record. And it's a record declaration syntax. Well, what's a record declaration syntax? Record declaration syntax. We'll just plop that in there, and then let's just go to metadata, and let's see what that derives from. And we should be able to map from a record to a class or struct, or vice versa. It does derive from a type declaration. Ah, that's the problem. Okay, I was being stupid. What we really want in the generator is in our, no, not the generator, the receiver. We don't want these to be class declaration syntax. We want these to be type, because it can be either a record or a struct, or I was being too specific with classes. I was being biased. Being biased is wrong. Okay, gotta check your biases. Whoops, I hit insert. Okay, so we have type declaration. We add them to that. Okay, now let's go to the generator. And we should candidate type symbol. So wait, let's rename this type node. Okay. And then we want this to be type symbol. And then that should be fine. Okay, so now let's run this because we have records. Or not. What did I do wrong? Oh, because I had that there. And it still doesn't work. Okay. Let's find out why. Because finding out is 3/4 of the thing, or something. It's funny, like 2 or 3 videos ago, I got so mad and so upset. You know, it was really stupid. Now I'm so calm. Okay, that should be fine. Oh, we didn't even find any, did we? Why not? Why did we not find any? Well, that's a problem. So we get a compilation unit syntax. Get a using directive. We get a qualified name. We get an identifier. I could make the breakpoint, like say, when it is a record declaration syntax. But you know, I'm a glutton for punishment. We have a namespace declaration. We have an identifier. Property declaration? What the heck? Okay. Well, why am I hovering over that? I can just look down here. Let's pull that over. Yeah, that would really suck if I don't actually get on the visitation. That's why. It never gets records. Huh, that must be a bug. That ain't me. So that might be something I want to report if it is actually a bug. It appears to be a bug. Because yeah, I can make this. I can make these actually. I should be able to make these structs, right? And run this, and we should still get a mapping. In fact, I could make one a struct and the other a class, and it shouldn't matter. Yeah, that works. Yep. But if I make it a record, it has no idea what it is. And let's do this, again, just a record declaration syntax. And if we go to that, that is a type declaration syntax. Okay, so it is actually a valid thing. But apparently in the receiver, if we run this, so the syntax node, yeah, and it has to be a node because it derives from type declaration syntax. So it should be the same as a class declaration syntax or a struct declaration syntax, or whatever that's called. I forget. Okay. So we get the using directive because we have that in there. We get the qualified name. You get the identifier name syntax. We get the using directive as system. Yep. Identifier name. We get the namespace declaration. And we have tested out. But then we get this property declaration syntax, which is completely wrong. Yeah, well, I'll stop recording in a couple minutes here, but this feels like a bug to me. I don't understand why it would not give you record declaration syntax nodes. It almost feels like it's thinking that the record is a property, which is completely wrong. But the syntax visualizer will show that as actually a record declaration. Well, it should. All right, let's just keep going. Identifier name. And then it gets the age. I'm just curious if I come back here and I say public record thingy, and I put in a public uint age get set. Okay. Now let's go to the syntax visualizer and look at this. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is go to the Roslyn thingy. Actually, you know what? Let's just do that right now. Let's go to github.net Roslyn 5,000 plus issues. Record declaration syntax. None. Well, I'm going to at least try to enter one, and then I'll hopefully get a response from the team. Maybe it's something they're already aware of, and they'll just say, yep, it'll be in the next release, whatever it is, and they'll fix it. But it appears to me like it's not something on my end. So to that point, let's go back out here. Let's take this off. Well, I'll keep this stuff here, but in the generator, do I have anything in here with record? No, I don't. So I never even had a to-do in here to handle that. But there's no reasons why you can't have records. It's just the engine itself is crapping out and not giving the ability to do that. Or I'm just missing something, but it appears like it's just not correct. Yeah, this is fine because it's the same thing. You have a namespace, you have a namespace, a record. There should be no problem with doing that. And it works if I have class or struct, so you'd think it would work. So I will put in a bug for that, and then I will fix that. And then I want to address, there's a couple of other things I thought of, which is in here, there's no reason, if the source type is, well, we never, yeah, I should restate this. We never declare those as the return or the source or the source and the destination. We never declare those as nullable. So the only thing is, if it's actually a value type, there's no reason to check for null. It's a worthless check. And we already checked to make sure that the destination has a public no argument constructor, so we can actually just create a new one. So yeah, we have to actually. I'm getting like distracted. Isn't that the let's make this a class. Just make this a struct because reasons. And then we'll put in here public string name get. And it shouldn't matter, you know. Okay, let's run this now. And yes, we shouldn't be checking for null. That's the thing I'm going to fix eventually. But yeah, we don't have enough space in there, so we want to tabs. How dare I? There, that was bugging me that the formatting was a little off. Now it's perfect. I really should consider using the indented text writer. It's in the code down namespace, which always makes me feel dirty. But yeah, it's at least working. So where was I? What was I describing? If the source type is a value type, then there's no reason to even have this line in here. So I could do something where I, you know, have null check and then I put that line in with a. Otherwise, I don't do that. Actually, you know what? Since I have time, why not? Why not? Let's say var perform null check. We're going to say if the source type is value type. If it's not a value type, okay, then what we're going to do is essentially this. This whole line here, okay? One, two, three. And actually, yeah, if this is where it's going to get weird because now the spacing is, I really should just use an indented text writer. But how many times have I said that already? We're going to do that, and then we're going to put here an environment new line. So if it is that, otherwise we just do string.empty because there's no reason to do that. And then, of course, we actually have to insert that into the generated code. Right there. Can I just do it? No, it doesn't understand that. How do you, whatever. Oh, it's because it's a literal. That's why, yeah. It's, so I had that's what I want. So now with the source being a value type, we just see that. It looks a little weird, but that's okay. If we suddenly make that a class, now we put in the check to say, hey, you got to give us something. Okay, cool. So that actually, that takes care of that to do. This one I still need to just put my head around. And then there's this one, which is if the destination property is non-nullable, then the source must be non-nullable as well. Because it could be null, and then you could be assigning null to a non-null value, and that just doesn't make sense. we do this like type check. So I don't think if I had, like when I say type equals, let's see, let's do it the other way. Not that it really matters, but what happens if I run this? I don't think it's going to care because it's just looking at the type. Yeah, then the annotation doesn't matter. We have to actually look at the annotation. So if you have a nullable destination with a non-nullable source, that's okay because you can always, you're going to be plugging in non-nullable values. If it's the reverse, you can't because that might be null and you're giving it to something that doesn't expect a null. So you really shouldn't be mapping that. And in fact, this is where I think people were talking about how, can you actually, in the context, report a diagnostic? You can actually do that. Okay, well, we should probably report diagnostic in this case if we decide to be strict with the nullable annotation. Okay. Now here we should say, instead of return that, we should say to do return a diagnostic stating that no maps were found. In other words, you thought you could map a source to a destination. We didn't find any matches, so you probably, there's a mistake somewhere in your code. Okay. The original, if you look back in the branch or in the original implementation of this, you'll find that there's actually, put in to-dos into the generated code because you actually had to do it as a refactoring and then generate the refactoring. This time we're going to try to generate a code fix. What's this one? This one is reported diagnostic stating that the destination type doesn't have a public no argument constructor. Cool. So we can actually be a little bit better than that. And then we can return like a list of diagnostics if we actually want to, do more. Though I think we pretty much die. Like if you don't have a constructor, it doesn't even bother to try to do the rest. And this is unfortunate because it's not going to do all of the rules. So maybe it finds that you don't have a no argument constructor. And so maybe, okay, to do, return a read-only, return an immutable list of diagnostics that for all validation, for all violated validations. Also change the implementation such that we find all of them rather than one and then bailing out. Because you may not have a no argument constructor. Fine. We'll throw in a diagnostic. You may not have any properties. Fine, we'll add a diagnostic. And then we only will get to the part here where we'll actually generate the code if we didn't have any diagnostics up to that point. Because once we actually get into here, we're basically assuming everything's good and we can generate the code. I like that. And then we can come down here and say, hey, do you have anything in the list? If so, we'll just report those diagnostics. Otherwise, we'll add the source code. But I'm going to do that at another time because day job is calling and I have to get to that. And I also want to add in this issue that I think I found. So, which means I want to commit this because I want to tell them, hey, go look at this branch. Here's the code if you want to try it. otherwise, whatever. And I have to, last thing, a little funny anecdote. I had forgot my phone in my office here, and I just never plugged it in last night, so I never had my alarm set. And my wife kicked me this morning in her sleep, which was, not painful, but enough to wake me up. And I was like, hey. And then I just looked at the time, and I said, because I thought maybe it's at 1 o'clock and, I have to get up to go to the bathroom or something. It was 5:30, which I was like, this is actually perfect. And then I realized, I never actually brought my phone up to set the alarm. So I just got up anyway. But it was good that I got up because I wanted to get up early anyway. I already have done some stuff for work because my older son is going for his test to get his temp license, which will be terrifying for me to actually have him driving a car. I hope he passes for one thing, because we have to drive all the way to St. Paul to do this because of COVID-19. You can't just go in and say, I want to take the test. You have to schedule it. You have to make sure you're there on time and everything else. And if he doesn't pass it, which his test-taking abilities are questionable. We've said to him, hey, do you know all the rules? Do you think you could go in and pass this? And he's like, yeah. Well, he doesn't really study. He hasn't learned yet that you have to study. He hasn't learned that lesson. So we'll see if he actually passes today. There's a part of just blind confidence in your kids and going, oh yeah, they're awesome. They can achieve anything they want. Well, yes, but there's a reality of you can't just say, I want to be here. If right now you haven't passed and you want to pass, what does it take to get from point A to point B? Wishful thinking doesn't do it. You have to figure out what are the things I need to do to get to that point, And it's just that I have a goal. What is my goal and how do I get to that goal? Just saying, believe in myself is a nice thing. It's good to have a positive attitude, but that doesn't actually help you pass a test, You still have to know the stuff, so we'll see how that goes. Anyway, that is all for now. Thank you all for watching. Leave comments and questions below. See you in the next episode.